All right, so we are continuing our study about what the Bible teaches about money. And I'm not supposed to go through a whole lot of review, but I'm just going to do a real quick from the Money Matters series, just to hit our main topics. Well, the main theme that I keep on going back to as far as what we should be thinking, let me get to it so I say it right, is as far as money goes, is that God owns it all. I'm entrusted with proper management of it, so every decision made should be one that God is pleased with. And that's kind of our main theme. And then from Money Matters, they had their 5 quick points. The first one, get out of debt. We talked about that pretty extensively last week. Act your wage, not your age, your wage, which means don't spend more than what you make. Get on a budget, which has a lot to do with that, because by budgeting you can know how much you have to spend. And if you remember correctly, I said that budgeting is important to get down into the very details. Like if you spend $3 a day at Starbucks, that needs to be in the budget. And I'm not encouraging that, because I'm not saying that's a good use of your money. But get down, a lot of people that will spend and have no idea where little bits of money go every day. Then we're save and invest, and that's what we're going to talk about today. And then give. So those are the five things that they kind of emphasize, and so we're hitting a bunch of those as we go here. So last week we talked about debt, and for those of you who aren't in debt, don't get into debt is the big lesson to know. And how do you do that? Avoid using credit cards that extend you beyond what you can pay, and follow those principles that we just talked about. So that's kind of, we talked about, that's kind of important, and we talked about how what is wise debt versus what's unwise debt, and what Ramsey would say is that there's no good debt except for a mortgage, possibly. But we gave some other, for different opinions, we gave some other possibilities of where you could go, what could be wise debt in certain instances. All right, so as we start today's lesson, I wanted to read a scripture kind of to just get us started here. I don't think I actually have this passage in any of our scriptures, but I wanted to read this one, and you'll see how it relates as we go here. But Matthew 6, beginning in verse 25. For this reason I say to you, do not be anxious for your life as to what you shall eat or what you shall drink, nor for your body as to what you shall put on. Is not life more than food, and the body than clothing? Look at the birds of the air, that they do not sow, neither do they reap, nor gather into barns, and yet your heavenly Father feeds them. Are you not worth much more than they? And which of you, by being anxious, can add a single cubit to his lifespan? And why are you anxious about clothing? Observe how the lilies of the field grow. They do not toil, nor do they spin. Yet I say to you that even Solomon in all his glory did not clothe himself like one of these. But if God so arrays the grass of the field, which is alive today and tomorrow is thrown into the furnace, will he not much more do so for you, O men of little faith? Do not be anxious then, saying, what shall we eat, or what shall we drink, or with what shall we clothe ourselves? For all these things the Gentiles eagerly seek. For your heavenly Father knows that you need all these things. But seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things shall be added to you. Therefore do not be anxious for tomorrow will care for itself. Each day has enough trouble of its own. All right, so I think most of you are probably familiar with that passage. We use it pretty often to talk about trying to help with not being worried about things and being anxious. And we'll come back to that in a little bit. All right, so last week we finished up talking about debt, and so this week we're going to talk about saving. All right, so where are we at in here? I don't even know where we're at. Right there. Okay. All right, so linked with that through an inverse relationship is investing. In order to be good stewards of what God has given us, we need to plan for the future, and part of this involves saving for our retirement. We should consider it our responsibility to put away enough to care for ourselves when we are older and can no longer provide for ourselves by working. Now, if we're fortunate, maybe we don't ever get to that point. Maybe we're always, and that's not by dying, that's by being in good shape and not getting to the point where we're not able to work. That would be our hope. But we know that with our lifespans increasing and with the the betterment of healthcare and all those kind of things, that lifespans are going longer, and a lot of people end up toward the end of their life not being able to work, right? So we should be planning for that. Now then, Matthew 6:19 through 20 says, "Do not lay up for yourselves treasures on earth, but lay up treasures where? In heaven, right? Okay, and the passage that I just read before that is talking about not worrying about tomorrow, right? Not being anxious for tomorrow. The birds don't store up things for themselves, and yet God takes care of them, right? So those two passages there, where this is all in the Sermon on the Mount, does that contradict what I just said about it's our responsibility to save for ourselves in the future?
Not at all.
Not at all? Okay. How do we reconcile these seemingly contradictory statements?
I think that passage is talking about accumulating things. A lot of people want the bigger boat, the bigger house, the bigger whatever, to appease themselves and to look like they're rich and to enjoy, the things that they quote unquote earn. But the other part of that is there are a lot of scriptures that talk about taking care of your family. Like it's your biblical responsibility to take care of your family.
Right.
And to build up an inheritance to leave for your kids. And to, the Bible has a lot to say about that.
Yeah, it's not contradictory at all. The emphasis in where the passage that I read first about anxiety is focused on not worrying about the future so much. Not planning for it. He's not saying don't do what you need to do for it, but the emphasis is to be thinking about today. As far as don't be worried so much about tomorrow. I mean, for instance, in relation to money, what if the stock market crashes? Like if I'm worried about that all the time, that's going to cause a lot of stress, right? And we of course, and we'll talk about this as we invest, but we know that the market's going to go up and down, so that we shouldn't be worried about that. But as much, I mean, obviously taking things into account, and so it's all a matter of balance and proper thought as you're thinking through these things. About do not lay up for yourselves treasures on earth, I think what Jimmy said was right. Yeah, our focus shouldn't be on gaining material possessions. We talked about this a lot. What happens to material possessions?
They rot.
They can be gone just like that, right? Not only do they rot, I mean, like I usually try to take pretty good care of my stuff, but it still gets old and worn out. Like that just happens. That's the way it is in this world. Things wear out no matter what you do. How many of you get holes in your socks? Yep. All of us, right? I mean, the socks wear out. Things wear out. That's just the way it is. Shoes. Now, some people, I don't know, we find sometimes good deals on used shoes that are almost like new. But from our family, you're never going to get a new pair of shoes because we tear our shoes up. They're done. But anyway, things wear out. So don't lay up for yourself treasures here. They can be gone just like that. Tornado, flood. The example about the rich man who built more barns for himself that we talked about. What happened to him? Did he get to use them? No, because he died. So like these things, the point is to put the right emphasis on things. It's not about not having anything. We know that there were people in the New Testament and in the church that were rich, right? What did they do at some points? They sold what they had and gave to people, right? So it's not about not having. It's about where our emphasis is and what we do with it. Let me see. Here, I'll read what I wrote just so I make sure I cover all my points on that. So the Bible does not condemn saving money for the future. What it condemns is hoarding money for ourselves and being greedy. I believe that by saving for the future with a proper attitude, we are fulfilling our responsibility, as what Jimmy mentioned, to be good stewards. I also don't think that just because we save money for our retirement, it means that we will not use the money in good ways. Like in retirement, if you follow the plans that we're laying out here, what are you going to do with some of the money that you have, that earnings you're going to give right? That's going to be part of your budget and things like that. So it's not a bad thing. Many people continue to contribute to the church and other organizations with money they have saved in retirement. People also gift money to charities in their wills. So all of these things, if we do it right, are good. Proverbs 6 through 9 we have up there. Let me read that real quick. We've read this one already, but just a little bit of a different emphasis. Go to the ant, O sluggard, and observe her ways and be wise, which having no chief officer or ruler, prepares her food in the summer and gathers her provision in the harvest. How long will you lie down, O sluggard? When will you arise from your sleep? A little slumber, a little folding of the hands to rest, and your poverty will come in like a vagabond, and your need like an armed man. So the ant, we were talking about working here. The ant works, right? That was what we emphasized before. But here is planning, right? They gather. Gather in the summer and provisions in the harvest. And what is that used for? For later, right? We could see that example with Joseph. Remember whenever the Pharaoh had the dreams and there were going to be 7 good years and then 7 bad years. And what did they do during the 7 good years? Stored for the 7 bad. What if that dream hadn't come to Pharaoh and Joseph hadn't interpreted it? What would have happened? What do you think they would have done with the 7 good years? Yeah, they would have made a lot of money during that 7 years, right? But then what would have happened in the 7 bad years? There wouldn't have been any food. No, there wouldn't have been anything. Like people couldn't have come to Egypt to get food because there wouldn't have been anything there. So I think that's a pretty telling story as far as how, saving for the future. All right, so why do people fail to save today?
Like to spend money.
People like to spend money, that's right. Keeping up with the Joneses. What's the latest new thing? Do you have any people that you know who always have like the latest iPhone or the latest tech gadget or whatever? When they first come out, those things are pretty costly. They're pretty costly anytime, but they're really costly when they first come out. So yeah, keeping up with the Joneses, getting the latest new thing.
Car poor. People are very car poor.
Car poor?
Yeah.
Wanting a good car.
Yeah. Well, just the average cost of a car.
Yeah. Cars are very expensive. Very, very expensive. And it's not just the car. I remind people of this whenever I talk about cars. When I bought my first car, it wasn't the price of the car that got me. It was the insurance on it because I was like 22, 23 and single and sports car, not good insurance prices. That really catches you. So you got to count insurance costs, count fuel costs, all those kind of things, maintenance costs, all of that needs to get calculated in. But cars are very expensive. And at the end of the day, what do you have with a car? Not much. It's not worth much. So unless you have a classic or something that you can sell for more than what you bought it for, not going to be a very good investment. So my role is kind of like get whatever car serves your purpose, what you need, and don't worry about being flashy or anything like that. So yeah, we talked about many people follow the philosophy, I want to get as much as I can right now. And that leads into the credit and debt, because then you're spending on the credit card and then you're getting into debt. Many people don't think they make enough money to live on and save right now. Like if you're big time in debt, how do you ever put anything away? I would argue that you make that part of your budget. Like even if you have a lot of debt, your budget is still on putting something away until you build up that fund that we talked about last week. That 3 to 6 month fund that will cover your expenses. Why else don't people save properly?
Nowadays.
What's that?
Nowadays.
Yeah, right now.
Social influences, FOMO, marketing.
Okay, that goes back to spending too much, right? What's another reason somebody might not spend, might not save besides spending?
Don't for it.
Don't see a reason.
Been taught.
There you go. Many people don't know where to go to learn. They think it's over their head. It's too confusing. Many people don't think they have the time to do it, to learn how to do it. How many people in our society live paycheck to paycheck?
The majority.
A lot. So that makes it difficult. And I think another reason, and this goes to you young people here in the front and back, many people think they will have more income in the future and they'll start saving later. What happens when you do that? Well, what's that?
You go into debt.
Yeah, you could go into debt, yep. You miss out on what? What do you miss out on? Jimmy's favorite thing.
The power of compounding.
Compounding interest, right? And we'll show you about that here. Also, I think tomorrow never comes. When you say, "Oh, I'll have more later, and I'll start saving later," it's just like at church. Here, when we talk about you kids, if you say, "Well, I'm going to work harder for God later when I grow up," tomorrow never comes. It never changes. You don't ever start doing more. So start it now, not later. So, let's see, I didn't do this as I was going. Yeah, there we go. Sorry, I forgot that this was one that you have that. There you go. So I can save later mentality. All right, so everyone can save though. It just requires planning and discipline. If you set aside a certain amount to be saved and stick to it, you won't miss it. You won't miss out. It's very dangerous to wait to start saving, and it's better at now, wherever you're at, just start now. Even if you can only put away, say, 1% of your wages right now, make it a goal to put that away. Do that. Then the next time you can raise, the next time you get a raise or an increase in your income or a decrease in your expenses, you can increase that amount. I think the goal should be to save at least 10% of your income. And just like we talked a little bit, and we'll get more into this later, but about giving, your goal should be at least 10%. Saving should be at least 10%. And that can be done through a number of different methods, including, we'll talk a little bit about these things, 401k plans, IRAs, stocks, bonds, insurance. There's a number of different ways that you can save. All right, so here we're going to start talking a little bit about compounding interest and the way things work as we've discussed a little bit. This is just an illustration to show how much difference it makes how early you start. So you guys that are not even out of high school yet should already be starting to save at this point. If you save $1 per week for 40 years at 5% interest, you would end up with $6,637. But if you do $5, you end up with $33,000, and if you do it with $10, you end up with $66,000. Now, is it really hard? Is it that much harder to do 10 than 1? Maybe, but hopefully everybody can do 10. So if you do 10 per week, starting now, in 40 years, you'd have $66,000 approximately.
Where do you get 5%? That was about to say.
That was just a rounding thing, just so we could, just for illustration purposes. Right now, I think there are funds out there that you can get close to 5% still.
6%. I was just really curious. CDs even right now are 4.5 to 5.
CDs are 4.5 to 5, yeah. So I think there's funds out there, depending on where you get into, that you can get more than 5 at this point. Now, if our government starts dropping interest rates, that becomes harder, of course. So then where do you get it? Usually in the market, you can get more than that. That wouldn't be interest necessarily, but you can get more of a gain. The market typically, I think, historically is performed at is it 10%? I think it's 10%.
For a 100-year period.
Yeah, so 10%, in some of my illustrations you'll see 10% because I think that's what it usually has historically performed at. Now, of course, past performance is not a promise of future performance, so don't forget about that. Yeah. Okay, so in the Money Matter series, there was 3 principles. I thought I had that in here. Maybe I don't. Okay. Yeah, I don't have a slide on this, but there's 3 principles given for investing. The first one is, and we talked a little bit about this already, I think, don't get rich quick. Do you remember what that means? 1 Timothy 6:9. But those who want to get rich fall into temptation and a snare and many foolish and harmful desires which plunge men into ruin and destruction. So, get rich quick schemes, you've heard about those. Anything that's too good to be true, those kind of things you want to avoid, probably. Occasionally something worked. Whenever somebody comes to you and I got this new business and it's about to go public. Occasionally you might land on that, but probably you probably only want to use any extra funds that you have for something like that, not funds you're counting on. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. You guys have heard that saying before. Ecclesiastes 11:2. Says, divide your portion to 7 or even to 8, for you do not know what misfortune may occur on earth. So, diversify is a term we use for that. And I'll talk to you about that here in a little bit. And then don't invest in things you don't understand. We talked a little bit about that as well. Proverbs 24:3 and 4 says, by wisdom a house is built, and by understanding it is established, and by knowledge the rooms are filled with all precious and pleasant riches. So if somebody comes to you with some kind of a way to get money and you don't understand what that is, you either need to take the time to find out what it is and see if it's good, or just say no. One of those two. Because if you don't understand it, you don't want to get into it. All right. So here are some principles that I had for successful investing. Number 1, control what is in your power to control. So what do I mean by that? What do we have the power to control? How much you spend, how much you save, where you put it. You can't control how much Social Security will fund you for retirement whenever you get there, right? There's no promise of that. Contrary to what people think, there's no promise for Social Security. That is it was a means by which to raise money, really, is what it was back when it was originally funded and founded. And with the way the population has gone and everything, it's very different than what it was. Either way, it's a government program, and you can't just say, well, I'll have Social Security when I retire. And that's the only thing. Like, especially for you young people, we have no idea what it's going to look like when you get there. So don't count on something you don't control for when you get to that point. You can't control what your employer is going to do as far as like what kind of savings plans they set up or whatever. But if they have something set up, you can use whatever they provided as a savings mechanism. You can't control taxes, right? That's outside of your control, but you can use tax saving strategies, and you can try to reduce your taxes by following the rules that are out there, right? You can't control inflation, but you can invest to try to keep up with inflation or do better than inflation. And of course, as Leah said right away, you can control your spending and the amount of debt you take on and the amount that you save. So those are things that you can control. Learn to use the rule of 72. What is the rule of 72? What does that up there mean? How long time it'll take to double your investment? To double, right? Yep. So if you have 2%, 36 years, 4%, 18 years, and so on down the line. So the higher the interest rate, the less time it takes to double your investment. So the importance of that is what Jimmy likes to talk about again. We'll go back to that again, compounding interest. The better rate that you have, the quicker your money will increase, the faster it'll go if you have it in an investment. Now here's the important part, learn the value of time. Let me see if this is where it gets a little confusing because I have a couple of spreadsheets that I want to pull up to show you guys some stuff here. But first off, time makes a big difference in your financial future. The earlier you start saving, the more time your investments have to grow. So I gave a couple of examples here. Example number one, $1,000 at 6% interest invested at age 16 would be $17,378 at age 65. Now, keep in mind these examples. That's like you put 1,000 in one time, and that's it. And then it grows to that point. Example number two, if your goal is $500,000 at age 65, how much would you need to invest if the interest rate is 6%? If you're going to get a 6% return, how much would you need to invest? Well, if you're at 25, you would have to put $251 in a month. So if you're younger than 25, that number's smaller. If at age 35, you'd have to put $498 in per month. If you're 45, you have to put $1,082 in per month. And if you haven't saved anything and you're 55, you have to put in $3,051 per month. So you guys see the difference there as far as when time starts, like it increases substantially the longer you wait. And that's because of that compounding interest and how it works. And here's, this may not be where I planned on doing it, but I will go ahead and put in here. I want to show you guys something. I don't want to hit escape, right? That's the deal. We want to just do that. Yeah, here we go. Okay. Now this is real rough because I didn't do an official amortization schedule or anything on this, but you guys have heard of Trump accounts? Anybody heard about Trump accounts? Babies born in a certain period of time here are going to have $1,000 deposited in basically an IRA type thing, which you can contribute to. This is assuming a 10%, using the market rate, 10%, that $1,000, I want to show you, this is where the compounding interest, what it can look like here. If nothing is done and that $1,000 is left in there for assuming retirement age of 65, doing nothing with it, and if it gets the market return of 10%, that baby will have close to $500,000 for retirement, doing nothing. Now then look, if you didn't receive that, like all of us in this room, then look at, like, just say that you put in $1,000 this year and you only have 20 years until retirement, you would only have $6,780. So that's that compounding interest that we're talking about. It grows exponentially. The first few years, it's not very big, but then it just starts getting bigger and bigger and bigger as you go here and starts doubling. I mean, it's always doubling, but the effect of that doubling gets really large when you get down to these latter years. So the earlier you start, the better you're going to have for getting this. Now, what if you were to change this rate to where you are only getting 5%? Oops, I did something wrong there. No, I don't think I did. Yeah, that's actually right. Yeah, I was thinking I did something wrong there because I thought the bottom line was higher than that. But so the rate is a huge factor in this as well. I thought when I did that before it was a little bit bigger than that, but it's not. So. All right. So you guys get what we're talking about here? Any questions on that part? Everybody got it? All right. All right, so another principle here, learn the value of persistence. As I mentioned, a little bit over a long period of time, if you start early enough especially, but even if you're older, will factor out to be a large amount. Learn to use tax-sheltered investments. So, how many of you guys know what a 401k is? Any of you kids? Okay, what about an IRA? Anybody know what an IRA is? None of the kids know what an IRA is either. All right. What about whole life insurance? Anybody know what whole life insurance is? All right. None of the kids are not raising their hands for any of this stuff. Term life insurance? Okay. So, all right. So, tax sheltered investments. A 401k is basically what used to be a pension for a company. They changed it. You know, companies no longer will just pay retirees indefinitely after they retire. There are some that are still out there, but for the most part, it's not the case. A 401k is a thing where you elect to put a certain percentage of your earnings into the 401k plan. The company has this plan, and you will have an investment there. And a lot of times, and that can be tax deferred, or it could be a Roth. A Roth 401k is after taxes. So you put it in after taxes, and then all the earnings on it, it'll earn without any tax. So once it's been charged tax, there's no more tax. So it earns without tax. A traditional 401k, you put it in before tax, so it reduces your current taxable income, and then when you pull it out, it gets taxed. So that's the difference in the two, the traditional and the Roth. A 401k plan, here's what people need to know. That's basically like if you use it properly, that's your savings for when you retire. And a lot of times the employer will match that. So like if your employer will match, say 2% or half of what you put in up to 5%, that means that 2.5% of your salary can get matched. So you always want, in my opinion, you always want to utilize that 401k plan to put in at least as much as what the employer will match. You want to at least get that much. A lot of times you want to do more because you want to use that as your retirement savings, and you would want to put at least 10% in. But you at least want to get that match that your employer offers. A lot of people will not do that because they don't see that money right now. And so they won't put in enough to get that match. But you want to do that. You're throwing away money if you don't. IRAs are basically like a 401k. You can put the money in and defer taxes on it, not pay tax on that money at this point. But that's not usually an employer thing. That's your own personal thing. You would set up an IRA, and then you can invest. That IRA will invest in certain things. You can dictate just like your 401k. I forgot to mention that. Your 401k, you can usually have options as to what you invest in. So you might be large cap stocks, you might be small cap stocks, foreign stocks, real estate, money markets, bonds, different options there. I put in here whole life insurance policies. The difference between a whole life insurance policy and a term life policy, whole life is something that you own and, how would you say this? Term life, you don't own it. Like when you quit paying premiums on it, it goes away. Like you own it for, each year you pay a premium, and that covers you. Like if you had a $500,000 policy, if you were to die, your beneficiaries would get $500,000. Whole life is different in that it can be an investment mechanism as well. Like if you own a whole life insurance policy, when you get to retirement, you can draw against that whole life insurance policy and use it for retirement. And it is after tax money, so you don't pay tax on it. Now, as far as those whole life versus term, I've heard different different thoughts on it. Some people say only get term insurance, it's cheaper, and then use the excess to invest. One thing I never liked about it is I didn't like buying something that I knew I was never going to get to use. Like, hey, if I die, I don't get it, right? There's nothing to it. So why would I want that? To me, psychologically, whole life can be a little better in that you know you can use it in the future through investment purposes. So that's one thing. But also, the whole life, if you stop paying premiums, it still stays there once it gets to a certain point. Like it will stay in place for the future. So the whole life policies, there's different thoughts on it, whether you want to do whole life, whether it's a good investment or not. I don't say one way or the other, but I won't tell you to do one thing or the other, but just know that it is a vehicle out there that would be an after-tax, like the Roth. It's an after-tax investment that you could use in retirement. It's typically more expensive than the term, and you don't get as good of a return on investment as you do in other investments. So that would be the downsides of it. Just do your research on that as to which way you think you would want to do. Typically, if you have a family, some type of life insurance is a good idea, because just in case something happens, to take care of your family. I did have a copy of that, I guess, what did I do there? Did I move? Oh, I accidentally moved. Never mind. All right, Dave, what did I do? I got off my presentation here. I hit the wrong button, I think. Yeah, I went back to the, I must have closed it, didn't I? I closed my presentation. The PowerPoint presentation back up. I accidentally closed it when I hit that button. All right, so while we're getting back to that, the other point that I had brought up was the next point is learn the value of diversification. So when you get into, if you have a 401k plan or type of investments, or you're investing in things, we talked about don't put your eggs all in one basket. So yeah, we're gonna, all right, let me just, okay, so there was some examples. Oh, yeah, I was skipping here. One thing, so here's an example of what happens with your 401k plan versus if you just put it into regular savings. If you do $40,000, you contribute $5,000 to your 401k. That reduces your taxable income to $35,000. If you were in a 25% tax bracket, your taxes would be $8,750 versus $10,000 if you didn't use that vehicle. So currently, you get a little less by using the 401k, but you saved $5,000 and you've also saved $1,250 of taxes. And you still end up with $26,250 versus $30,000. So it comes out better to use that vehicle as far as how much money you have as a whole. Okay, and I think we just talked about that. Earnings on traditional IRAs and 401ks are non-taxable until the funds are withdrawn. Earnings on the Roth IRA are non-taxable, but it doesn't reduce your current taxes. Earnings on whole life insurance policies are non-taxable. Again, does not reduce your current taxable income. When considering which type of investment you should use, one important factor is to know when your income will be the highest, at the current or in the future. That depends on, that would kind of dictate whether you want to use a Roth or a traditional 401k. And also considering that paying down a mortgage or other type of loan also could be a guaranteed type of debt, a return of an investment. In other words, if you have a high interest debt out there, like say you had interest at 8%, you're guaranteed to save 8% by paying that down. And that might be a better return than what you could get in a money market. So you can consider that as well. Okay, value of diversification. Don't put everything into the same type of investment. We're talking about types of investments. You guys know what I'm talking about when I say large cap, small cap. Like large would be big companies, like your S&P 500. Small would be companies that aren't on the S&P 500, smaller stuff. International would be like stocks that aren't US stocks, some other countries' stocks. Real estate, you guys know what investing in real estate would be. Usually that's involved in a mutual fund type thing. What else? What did I say? Bonds, of course. You can invest in a mutual fund that would be invested in bonds. All those kind of things. If you're too risky, you could lose it all. So people usually say like a good mix might be, depending on where you are in your life and saving for retirement, if you're just starting off, I think they usually say like 80-20, 80% in stocks, 20% in bonds or fixed income. As you get closer to retirement, that usually goes to 50-50, like a 50-50 mix. But too conservative, you might not get enough return. Too risky, you might lose it all. And if you get a good mix, you hope that your risk and your reward, your earnings are there together. Jimmy, I took up all your time. I'm sorry. I was going to let you do some stuff here. There was a couple of things that I wanted to talk about, the priorities from Money Matters series. They say 10% tithe to God, get your living expenses, the Oh No fund we talked about, like your emergency fund, get your debt paid down, and build wealth. And so that's where they say... And remember that the main principle here is that God owns it all. I'm entrusted with proper management of it. So every decision made should be one God is pleased with. So the question here is, if someone looks at your checkbook and what you spend money on, what would they think is most important in your life? Food? So that's the question you want to ask yourself and see what people think. All right, I was going to have Jimmy kind of show a little bit. He's the one that's most familiar with doing kind of some online type of stuff within, like how to invest. Like the 401k plan is really easy because you just have to, your employer's already got it. You just have to sign up for it. An IRA, you might have to go to a money manager or something like that, or a bank to get that set up. But there's a number of ways to get those kind of things set up. But be aware of them, and like I said, for you young people, start using them. What you can,
the important thing
yeah.
for them to know is that right now, if you guys are getting taxed on income, you can open up an IRA.
Yeah, you can open up an IRA at any point once. Yeah.
Account, you can start putting money into it.
Now, hopefully, most of you aren't having to pay taxes yet, but maybe if you're making enough, yeah.
Sophie pays taxes.
All right, so
Taxes are taken out.
yeah, and depending on what kind of taxes. Now, if you have, if you're the taxes that you're paying, a lot of young people, the taxes that they pay are self-employment tax, because if they're working as a contractor, like they don't have an employer who's taking out the Medicare taxes, you can't do much about that. Like that kind of comes off the top. But any income tax, federal income tax, those kind of vehicles will reduce the taxes. All right, at some point I'll probably have Jimmy come up and do that. I was hoping to have it while the kids were here, but we'll still get to that, like just showing that on screen. And I'm not sure where we're going to go from here next week, but we'll continue on talking about some of this money stuff and everything next week. So thanks for your attention, and we'll be back for worship in a little bit.
Leading with Him to guide me unto the Spirit's home.